The Gathering Storm. The Galactic Council Hall was built to inspire fear. It was a chamber larger than any cathedral on Earth, a circle of glowing stone and floating banners. Dozens of alien leaders sat on raised thrones, their eyes fixed on the single human standing at the center. The hall was alive with sound, deep laughter, clicking mandibles, hissing voices. The aliens mocked, whispered, and sneered. To them, the human was nothing more than a fragile animal, a newcomer to the stars. "Look at it," one reptilian leader said, his scaled lips curling into a grin. Soft skin, weak frame. Their kind barely survived their own planet. A tall insectoid queen tilted her head, antennae twitching. "They beg for a place in our council. How amusing." The human, dressed in a plain, dark uniform, stood silent. His face showed no anger, no fear. His hands were clasped behind his back. Only his eyes moved, calm but sharp, watching each alien as they laughed. From above, the banners of ancient empires floated in the air. These were civilizations that had ruled stars for thousands of years. They had crushed rebellions, erased planets, enslaved weaker races. To them, humanity was just another small voice asking for mercy. "They do not belong here," a heavy-voiced warlord rumbled, his tusks gleaming under the chamber's light. "Let us end this farce." But protocol demanded one chance. Every species that approached the council was allowed to speak. Even the weakest deserved that moment. And so, the human was invited to stand before them. The laughter grew louder. It echoed against the glowing walls until the chamber seemed like a theater, and the human no more than an actor in a tragic play. The council speaker, a creature with 6 eyes and a voice like broken glass, raised one long arm. The noise slowed, then faded. "You have been heard," the speaker said. "You are granted words before judgment. Use them quickly, for patience is thin." The silence that followed was sharp. Every leader leaned forward, expecting excuses or begging. They had heard it all before. Pleas for mercy, promises of obedience, desperate claims of value. But the human did not speak right away. Instead, he looked around the hall. His gaze passed over the scaled, the feathered, the armored, the ancient. He studied them as if memorizing every line of their faces. The pause stretched long enough that whispers returned, confusion threading through the silence. "Is it mute?" one alien chuckled. "Perhaps it has nothing to say. Perhaps it knows it is already defeated." Still, the human did not react. His breathing was steady, his expression calm. Only the faintest tightening at the corner of his mouth suggested he had heard. The speaker's 6 eyes narrowed. "Do not waste our time, human. Speak or we will end this now." The human finally moved. Slowly he stepped forward. His boots clicked against the polished stone, echoing in the cavernous hall. He stopped at the very center of the circle. When he lifted his head, his voice carried clearly, calm but strong. It was not the voice of someone begging. It was not the voice of someone afraid. Every leader leaned in. The human spoke only 5 words. And then the chamber changed. The laughter died instantly, cut as if by a blade. The hall, moments before alive with mockery, now held a silence so heavy it pressed against the air. Eyes widened, antennae froze, tails stiffened. The most ancient rulers shifted in their thrones, their confidence cracking for the first time in centuries. The words echoed, sharp and unforgettable, bouncing against the glowing walls until they seemed carved into stone itself. The speaker's 6 eyes trembled. Other leaders exchanged quick, uneasy looks. Some hissed, others clenched their claws. None laughed anymore. For the first time in living memory, the Galactic Council was struck dumb by a human, and the human stood tall, saying nothing more. His silence was louder than their roars had ever been. Suspense lingered, burning like fire, in every corner of the chamber. What had just been spoken was not a threat, not a plea, but something else. Something that made every ruler question the future of their empire. In that moment, the galaxy shifted. The storm had begun. Echo of silence, the cur. Hall stayed frozen. The human's 5 words still echoed inside the stone walls like a ghost refusing to fade. No one had expected it. No one had even imagined such a simple phrase could change the air of the chamber. The mighty lords of 1,000 systems, beings, who had crushed rebellions and silenced entire planets, now sat stiff in their thrones. Their laughter was gone. In its place hung a silence so deep that even the smallest breath felt loud. An avian leader's feathers ruffled as she leaned back, eyes sharp with sudden unease. "Impossible," she whispered, her voice trembling in disbelief. A reptilian warlord bared his fangs, trying to force out a laugh, but it died in his throat. His scaled fingers tapped the arm of his throne, restless, unsure. The insectoid queen clicked her mandibles nervously. It cannot mean what I think it means." The human said nothing more. He stood still, hands behind his back, as if he had delivered not a plea, not a threat, but a sentence. His silence burned stronger than their power. The speaker, with 6 eyes wide, struggled to recover his authority. His voice cracked like brittle glass. "Explain yourself, human. Those words, what do they mean? Speak now." But the human only tilted his head slightly, as though amused by the desperation in the demand. His lips curved into the faintest shadow of a smile. The council chamber stirred. Voices overlapped, hisses and growls filling the air. For the first time in centuries, the council was not united in its mockery. Some shouted that the words were nonsense. Others argued they carried a hidden truth. A horned warlord slammed his fist on the stone railing. "This is a trick, a bluff. Humans are too weak to make us tremble." Yet even as he roared, his eyes betrayed doubt. Because deep inside, he too felt the weight of those words pressing against his chest. The insectoid queen's whisper grew sharper. "What if it is not a bluff? What if these words are a signal? A truth we do not want to face?" A murmur swept through the hall. Whispers rose like storm winds. The alien leaders, who moments ago had laughed together, were now divided, their unity cracking like glass under strain. And still, the human stood silent. In the shadows near the back of the chamber, a younger alien advisor leaned close to his. "Master." His voice was hushed, urgent. "We should not dismiss them. Their history is full of survival. Every time they fall, they rise stronger. What if this is proof?" The master snarled at him but gave no reply. His eyes were fixed on the human, who seemed smaller than any of them but somehow heavier than all. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. Finally, the speaker slammed his staff against the ground, the sound ringing through the chamber. "You will speak, human." His 6 eyes narrowed into cold slits. "Tell us what lies beneath your words, or face judgment now." The human finally moved. Slowly, he raised his head. His voice was calm, measured, each word cutting through the air like a blade. "You already know what it means." The statement landed heavier than a shout. Leaders shifted in their seats, antennae trembling, tails twitching, claws tapping nervously. Because the truth was, somewhere deep inside, they did know. The galaxy had whispered about humanity before. Stories of battles survived, disasters endured, impossible odds turned into victories. They had called humans reckless, stubborn, emotional, but they had also called them unbreakable. And now, those 5 words carried the weight of every human struggle, every human victory. A silence heavier than stone pressed down again. No one dared laugh. The insectoid queen's voice cracked as she spoke. "If they are true, then everything we believe is a lie. Our order, our empire, our power, it could collapse." The reptilian warlord snarled, his voice unsteady. "We cannot allow one fragile species to rewrite the galaxy." But his claws shook as he said it. The human's smile lingered. He spoke no more. His eyes moved slowly from one alien to another, holding their gaze, forcing them to see him not as weak prey but as something else, something that refused to bow. And the council realized something terrifying. This was not a plea for survival. This was not a weak species begging to be spared. This was a declaration. A storm had entered their hall not with weapons or armies, but with 5 words that carried the strength of 1 billion lives. For the first time in living memory, the galaxy's rulers felt fear, and the human had not even begun. Cracks in the illusion. The chamber had always been a place of control. Every race that entered here bent to the will of the council, no matter how proud or strong they once were. But now, cracks were spreading through that illusion. The human had spoken only 5 words, yet their echo still clung to the air like smoke after fire. The alien leaders shifted uneasily on their thrones. Their eyes darted to each other, searching for confidence but finding only doubt. The reptilian warlord's claws scraped the stone railing. "It is nothing but a bluff," he growled, his voice sharp but trembling at the edges. "Humans seek to frighten us, they have no strength." Yet even as he spoke, his gaze fell on the human again. That calm stance, that silent certainty, something in it unsettled him more than a fleet of warships ever could. From the opposite side, the avian matriarch leaned forward. Her golden eyes narrowed. "A bluff? Then why do you tremble?" Gasps rippled across the hall. Few dared to challenge the reptilian warlord openly, but the words had struck a truth no one could ignore. The insectoid queen's mandibles clicked. "We laugh at them, but history does not lie. They have survived plagues, wars, famine. They tear themselves apart, and still they endure. What other race does this?" Her words spread like sparks across dry grass. Advisors whispered behind their masters' thrones, fearful and curious. The unity of the council was breaking. The speaker slammed his staff, his 6 eyes burning. "Silence! We will not be divided by a trick of words." But the chamber no longer listened to him. The human remained perfectly still, his silence more powerful than any speech. He was not begging for a seat among them. He was forcing them to question why they sat there at all. A younger alien noble finally broke the tension. His voice was thin but urgent. "We cannot ignore this. If their words are true, if they truly stand by them, then the galaxy may change." The older nobles hissed and scoffed, but their eyes betrayed fear. The reptilian warlord leaned close to his general, speaking in a voice too low for most to hear. "Send word to our scouts. I want every human colony observed. If they are hiding something, I will know." The avian matriarch whispered to her advisor, "They do not bluff with empty words. I have seen their fleets at the edge of my borders. Small, yes, but they never run." The insectoid queen closed her eyes, her antennae twitching. "Perhaps we are witnessing the birth of something we cannot stop." The council chamber felt smaller now, suffocating under the weight of unease. Leaders who had mocked together now avoided each other's eyes. Trust was unraveling. Still, the human did not speak. His silence was deliberate, forcing them to fill it with their own fears. Finally, one of the younger reptilian generals lost patience. He rose from his seat, his tail lashing behind him. "We should crush them now. End their kind before these words grow into fire." But before the speaker could answer, the avian matriarch stood too, wings spreading wide. "And if you strike and fail, do you not see? That is the danger of their kind. Even in loss they rise again." The chamber erupted in shouts. Some called for war. Others urged caution. Old alliances frayed in moments, centuries of balance breaking apart because of a single human voice. The speaker's staff slammed again, the sound cracking like thunder. "Enough! This is the council, not a market of fear. We will not let one weak species shatter our order." But his words carried less weight than before. Even his 6 eyes betrayed unease. The human finally moved. His gaze swept across the chaos, the arguments, the fear. He raised his chin slightly, a calm defiance on his face. Then, with a quiet voice that somehow reached every corner of the hall, he said, "You already see the truth." The uproar died. Leaders froze. The human's words were not loud, but they struck deeper than any roar. The illusion of alien superiority, the belief that they were unshakable rulers of the galaxy, was crumbling, and the cracks were widening. Rising shadows. The council chamber had not been the same since the human spoke. The laughter that once echoed inside those walls had never returned. Even outside the hall in the starry corridors of the capital world, whispers spread like fire. Advisors carried fragments of rumor. Guards muttered to one another when no masters listened. From the lowest clerk to the highest noble, everyone repeated the same thing. 5 words. A human spoke 5 words and the galaxy trembled, but none dared say those words aloud. Not yet. In the private chambers of the reptilian warlord, shadows stretched long. His generals stood in a circle, their scales glinting under dim red light. "Report," he hissed. A scout bowed low. "We sent ships near the human colonies. They are small, scattered, but different. Where others would fall, they endure. Planets unfit for harvest, they reshape. Moons without air they breathe life into. They do not surrender." The warlord's claws tightened on the edge of the table. "Do they build weapons?" The scout hesitated. "Not weapons of power like ours, but tools, machines. They adapt, scraps into survival. If they lack steel, they use stone. If they lack food, they grow it from dust. It is unnatural." The warlord turned away, his throat vibrating with a growl. Survival again and again. The same truth the human had thrown into the council like a spear. Far away, in the avian matriarch's palace, wings rustled uneasily. Her advisors laid reports before her. Their fleets are small, but their discipline is unlike others. When attacked, they do not scatter. They fight until nothing remains, and even then, someone survives. The matriarch whispered to herself, "One human may fall, but another rises. They are not a species, they are a chain. Break one link and the chain grows longer." Her golden eyes turned to the stars beyond her window. For the first time, she wondered if her empire could stand against such a chain. Meanwhile, the insectoid, Queen's Hive buzzed with restless energy. Drones carried messages to her throne, reports of humans on distant worlds reaching out, not just to their own kind, but to others oppressed by the council. Small alliances forming in silence, broken species, forgotten colonies, all beginning to look to humanity as if it carried something greater than weapons. Hope. The Queen's mandibles clicked nervously. Hope was more dangerous than any fleet. Back in the council's great hall, tension thickened with each new gathering. Old allies sat farther apart. Accusations spread like cracks in stone. "You side with them," one leader snarled at another. "You fear them," came the reply. "And you do not?" Every meeting ended in shouts. The speaker's staff no longer brought silence as it once did. Even he, with 6 eyes and centuries of authority, could feel the order slipping away, and, through it all, the human remained calm. Each time he was summoned, he stood in the center of the circle, hands behind his back, saying little, but his silence worked like poison, seeping deeper with every heartbeat. On the 3rd gathering after his arrival, the speaker tried once more to shatter that calm. "Enough games," he hissed. "You think words can shake us? You think survival makes you strong? We have crushed empires older than your son." The human's eyes lifted. His voice, soft but sharp, cut through the chamber. "And yet, here I stand." The leaders froze. It was not a shout, not even a challenge. But the truth inside it was undeniable. The council had destroyed countless worlds, but never before had a survivor stood in their hall and refused to kneel. A silence followed, heavy and dangerous. It was no longer just about humans. It was about the order of the galaxy itself. The avian matriarch broke that silence, her voice low but steady. "If they rise, then all our empires may fall." The reptilian warlord bared his fangs. "Then we strike first, before their rise is complete." But the insectoid queen hissed sharply. "Strike, and prove their words true? Every attack makes them stronger. Every defeat becomes fuel." To fight them is to build them. The chamber spiraled into chaos once more. But beneath the arguments, the truth was clear. Fear had taken root. Fear of a species too stubborn to die. Fear of a people who had nothing but each other, and yet could defy the galaxy's oldest rulers. The human watched them tear at each other, his silence heavier than any weapon. When the shouting finally dulled, he spoke only 3 words. "You will see." And though his voice was quiet, every leader felt the shadow of those words stretching far beyond the hall, out into the stars, into their empires, into the hearts of their people. The rising shadows had begun. The words that changed the galaxy. The council chamber was no longer a hall of unity. It had become a battlefield without weapons. Each gathering cracked the foundation of their ancient order. Old allies distrusted each other, and whispers of rebellion grew louder with each passing day. All of this began with a single human. He stood once more at the center of the circle, plain uniform untouched, eyes steady. The alien leaders who once mocked him now avoided his gaze. Their laughter had died weeks ago. In its place grew a fear they refused to name. The speaker, voice sharper than ever, struck the staff against the stone. "This farce has gone too long. The human will speak. Today, we demand the truth." 6 eyes glared at the lone figure. "What power lies behind your words? What is it you hide?" The chamber fell into silence. Dozens of alien leaders leaned forward, claws tight, feathers trembling, mandibles clicking in restless anticipation. The human looked around slowly, his gaze calm but piercing. For a moment it felt as though he carried the weight of every star behind his eyes. When he spoke, his voice was steady, quiet, but impossible to ignore. "You think we are weak because we bleed, because we fall, because we struggle." His words rang like steel in the air. The chamber held its breath. "You think survival is shame, but for us, survival is strength." Some leaders shifted uncomfortably, others clenched their fists, but none dared to interrupt. The human stepped forward. His boots echoed against the polished floor, each step heavy with meaning. "We are not stronger than you, we are not faster. We do not live as long. But when one of us falls," his voice grew sharper, "another rises." The insectoid queen froze, her mandibles locked tight. The avian matriarch's wings pulled closer to her body. Even the reptilian warlord leaned forward, unease growing in his golden eyes. The human's next words cut through the silence like lightning. "We never fight alone again." The 5 words struck the chamber harder than any weapon. For a moment, the galaxy seemed to stop. Leaders who had faced supernovas, who had watched worlds burn, now sat in stunned silence. Because they understood. The meaning was clear. Humanity was not one voice. Humanity was many. One human in the council meant all of humanity standing behind him. And not only humans, already, whispers spoke of other species reaching out to them, forgotten colonies daring to hope again. "We never fight alone again." It was not a threat. It was not even a promise. It was a fact. The speaker's 6 eyes widened. "Impossible. You cannot unite so many. No species has ever." The human interrupted, his tone calm but sharp. "No species has ever been us." The hall erupted in chaos. Some leaders shouted for war, their voices breaking with panic. Others called for caution, fear dripping from every word. The insectoid queen hissed, "If this is true, the galaxy will never be the same." The avian matriarch whispered to herself, "It already isn't." The reptilian warlord roared, slamming his fist. "They will spread like fire." But even he could not hide the tremor in his voice. Through it all, the human remained steady. His silence after those words was louder than their cries. He had planted a seed that could not be uprooted, a truth that could not be denied. Outside the chamber, the whispers spread faster. Servants carried the phrase to the streets. Soldiers muttered it in the barracks. Advisors wrote it into secret reports. "We never fight alone again. It reached the oppressed colonies. It reached the forgotten worlds. And for the first time in centuries, they did not feel alone. Hope had found a voice. Inside the chamber, the speaker tried desperately to restore order, but his staff's strikes rang hollow. Authority no longer belonged to the council. It belonged to the human. At last he turned to leave. His steps were unhurried, yet every sound of his boots echoed like a drumbeat. None dared stop him. None dared speak. The most powerful rulers of the galaxy sat silent, watching a lone human walk away, carrying with him the future of countless worlds. The council had ruled by fear for millennia, but now fear belonged to them, and the galaxy would never be the same.